Today we are working Psalm 129. Psalm 129 is one of the Ascension Psalms, and it's traditionally used to overcome any kind of oppression, and it's also used to grow virtue and goodness. And today we are going to use Psalm 129 to solve or overcome any long-standing problem. So anything that's been hanging around for a long time, you can't seem to get rid of it, let's use this psalm to deal with it. The way we work psalm magic is very simple and very effective. We take the psalm that we're working and we recite it out loud all the way through once without stopping. This is called an incantation. Once we've finished with that incantation, we go back through the psalm and we consider each verse one at a time. And we take our time to dig and find the occult meanings that lie behind each of those verses. Occult means hidden. And we try to apply those seeds of wisdom to the situation that we brought to the psalm. And by doing this activity in our minds, we are taking those magic seeds and planting them in the fertile grounds of our mind where they take root. They grow, they blossom forth, and then they bear fruit after their kind. And that's what you and I are going to do together right now with Psalm 129. Many a time they have afflicted me from my youth, may Israel now say. Many a time have they afflicted me from my youth, yet they have not prevailed against me. The plowers plowed upon my back, they made long their furrows. The Lord is righteous, he hath cut asunder the cords of the wicked. Let them all be confounded and turned back that hate Zion. Let them be as the grass upon the housetops, which withereth afore it groweth up. Wherewith the mower filleth not his hand, nor he that bindeth sheaves his bosom. Neither do they which go by say, The blessing of the Lord be upon you. We bless you in the name of the Lord. Usually these Ascension Psalms are very lofty, very happy, and oriented toward thanksgiving and gratitude. This one's a little different. This one has a bit of a curse in it, some grievance. It starts out with, Many a time have they afflicted me from my youth. May Israel now say, Many a time have they afflicted me from my youth, yet they have not prevailed against me. For us today, since this is in regards to a long-standing problem, we are acting as though this problem is so old and so long that it's been afflicting us since our youth. At least it seems that way. It just doesn't seem to go away. It starts out by ruminating within oneself and then turning to the congregation and asking that the congregation repeat the statement about affliction. So for us, that means that we're recognizing that there's a problem, and then we're going within to the congregation within our minds and having our own thoughts respond back to us. Yes, we've been afflicted. This is a problem. And now it says, Yet they have not prevailed against me. And this is so important for us to understand that even though we say that this problem has been around for a long time, it hasn't prevailed against you. Not ultimately, because it's not the will of the infinite that it prevail against you. There may be symptoms still, there may be evidence to support the fact that the problem is still around, but it hasn't gotten you yet, and neither will it. And because we're working this magic, we are getting to the root of the problem and rooting it up so that it does get solved. And we're talking again to the congregation here. The plowers plowed upon my back. They made long their furrows. What an image. Somebody with a plow plowing against your back. That's how awful this problem seems. It's like you can't get rid of it, and it just doesn't stop. It's plowing against your back. It's making furrows upon your back. It hurts you, this problem. It's tattooing you with itself, and you can't get rid of it. The wonderful thing about these Psalms is they don't just give a lot of positive affirmations. They really get to the heart of what's troubling us. The Lord is righteous. He hath cut asunder the cords of the wicked. Okay, so we're not addressing the Lord specifically here. We're addressing the congregation, but we're talking about the Lord. So it's important that we orient our minds to what we mean by the Lord. When we're talking to our thoughts, which is the congregation, we are letting those thoughts remember and know that the Lord is infinite intelligence, infinite life, infinite soul, infinite spirit. There's many different names for the Lord. The Lord represents the one and only power of the universe, and there's nothing that can oppose it because there is only one. There's nothing that can thwart it because there is only one. And since there is only one, whomever that power is for, no one can be against. And since that power is for you, no one can be against you, not even this problem that seems to be plowing up your back. And recognizing that this power is pre-gender, is not a deity that's separate from you. You can think in terms of you being like a sunbeam to the sun. You are an extension of this power. And as a soul that is extended, you have no problems. However, we do have in this world free will, and we can create for ourselves our own separate identities, our own separate personalities, and those are called egos. And when we create a separate identity for ourselves that we believe is separate from our Creator, that is the birth of all fear, and that is the birth of all problems for us. And in recognizing that the Lord, or that power, desires only that we remember who we really are, and only desires that we be happy. When we turn to that power, we are not only turning to the source of our life, but we are also turning to the source of all the solution to any problem, including this. Before we get off of this verse 2, it's important to remember that to the infinite, there are no such things as big problems and little problems. There's never going to be a time when you go to the infinite with a problem and the infinite's response is going to be, yeah, but that's such an old problem. It's really too big for me. I can't do anything about it. You're just going to have to live with it because it's too big for me. It's not going to happen. The Lord is righteous. He hath cut asunder the cords of the wicked. So think about the cords of the plow that's going up your back in this psalm. The infinite is righteous, meaning the source of right thinking, the source of all sanity and right-mindedness. When we turn to that source, when we turn to that power to heal us, the first thing that power does is heal our minds about the problem, because the problem is only an effect of a problem in our mind. It's cutting asunder the cords tying us to the problem, and that cord exists within our mind. Let them all be confounded and turned back that hate Zion. Zion is the meeting place of you and the infinite. In the Psalms, it's considered a temple upon a hill or up on a mountain. But for us, if we just go back to that same image that we had earlier, that we're like a sunbeam from the sun, it's where that sunbeam connects to the sun. That's Zion. So any part of our minds that hates Zion is simply the ego mind that denies that we are part of the infinite. And the part of our minds that denies that we're part of the infinite wants us to believe that we're all alone and that we have to fight for ourselves and fend for ourselves, and that it's a scary world and there's no hope for us because we are all by ourselves and there is no infinite intelligence and there is nothing that we can do other than maybe fight. But good luck with that, because they're going with plows up our back. The ego has always got every reason why we're special, in that this problem is so big that nothing can work for us. That's how special we are. We're so special that even if there is an infinite intelligence, it can't fix this problem because this problem is unsolvable. That's what the ego wants us to believe. And that's not right-mindedness according to the Psalms. That is insanity. And so it's saying the Lord is righteous. The Lord is the source of all sanity and is going to return us to our right mind. And every thought from the ego now will be confounded. The ego being that which hates Zion. It says, let them all be confounded and turned back that hate Zion. So turned away from us so that we're no longer dealing with this problem. And not only that, but the ego will destroy itself. Well, you don't have to destroy the ego. You don't have to hate the ego. You don't have to kill the ego. You don't have to fight against the ego. The ego is just a habit of thinking. And that habit of thinking will destroy itself because it has nothing to do with us. And once we turn to the infinite will take care of us, and we can let the ego deal with its own problems. Let them be as the grass upon the housetops, which withereth before it groweth up. The grass on the housetops isn't connected to the earth. There's no source for it to get its nourishment. There is no source for it to continue growing, so it has to dry. It's just nothing but dried grass when it's on top of the house. And that's what the ego is, ultimately, is nothing. There's no substance to it. Wherewith the mower filleth not his hand, nor he that bindeth sheaves upon his bosom. If you're trying to harvest any kind of grain or any kind of grass that's got nourishment in it, any kind of grain that's got nourishment in it, you're not going to be able to bind that on top of a house because it's already withered. It's already died. And so there is no nourishment that comes from the ego. There's nothing that comes from the ego at all, other than temporary lies, temporary problems. And once we realize that and see it for what it is, a nothing, it's just a nothing, it's an apparition, we're not afraid of it anymore. And that's what this psalm is so good at, is showing us that really it doesn't matter how long you've had this problem, because it doesn't have any substance to it other than what we've been giving it, because we've been buying into this idea that there's this unsolvable problem and that there's nothing that we can do about it. And so we're feeding it. And now that we're going to recognize, no, wait a minute, that grass has already grown up on top of a house. It's not even connected to the earth. So why am I feeding it anymore? Let it die. Neither do they which go by say, the blessing of the Lord be upon you. We bless you in the name of the Lord. So that's the idea here. When we stop blessing the ego withers and dies. Because the infinite's not blessing the ego, because the infinite realizes that there is no such thing as the ego, that it doesn't really exist except for in our nightmare here. When we stop blessing the ego, when we stop turning to the ego, when we stop nourishing the ego, when we stop believing in the fearful thoughts of the ego, we'll recognize that the ego is nothing. And it will die. It will wither and die, but not because we're making it real by fighting with it, but because we're turning away from it completely and relinquishing our investment in it 100%. And we're turning all the way to the infinite, which is where the righteousness is, meaning sanity, meaning right-mindedness. That's where peace is. Peaceful thinking is sane thinking. And when we are in the throes of our ego mind, we are doing anything but having peaceful thoughts. So by turning away from those unpeaceful thoughts and turning to the thoughts of the infinite, we then get an experience of peace. And as we get an experience of peace, we know that we're in the right place in our mind. We're in that righteousness. And when we're in righteousness, then that grass no longer is getting its nourishment off our backs. Instead, our backs are completely healed. We're no longer giving this parasite of our minds any home, and therefore it will die. It will wither and die just like grass on a roof. So you just keep coming back to this psalm each and every day until you get a sense of peace and certainty about whatever it is that you brought to the psalm. And once you get that sense of peace and certainty, it's an indicator from your deep mind that your spell has been cast and you don't need to work on it anymore, because the manifestation of that spell is imminent. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, blessed be.